All right. Thanks everyone for joining us this evening. We have 4 commissioners in attendance. Myself and Ned are in the room. Dave and Tom are virtual. We will be doing one consent agenda item. Then we're going to be having a bit of a planning workshop. And when we get to that, we'll do another round of introductions so we are all on common ground. With regards to the consent agenda item, I'm going to be asking for public comments in a moment. And before we do that, anybody that will be commenting on that item, if they would, Patrick, you've been told not to say anything, so you're good.
I can email it to you.
So within public comments at this point, we will have entertained any discussion points from the audience on items that are not on our agenda, or items about the consent agenda. So with regards to that, are there any questions or comments from anyone on the consent agenda item?
I have a question or want to bring up a topic. The easement for the trail access, Darren, staff recommended not including that.
Recording in progress.
Sorry about that. Go ahead, Tom.
Yeah. So wouldn't it be better just to leave it in there, even if it's not used?
We can certainly do that. And that can also be reviewed again at preliminary. But if you want to change it in sketch, that's fine too.
I would. I mean, I understand it's probably not going to be used, but it doesn't seem like it's going to hurt anything either.
Sure.
So,
Part of the reason, just to give you some background, when I was in Korea, when we went to a lot of little out of the way trails that were built up in unlikely places, and it just seems like there are possibilities, and it would be something that somebody in the future might want.
Yep. Sounds good. We can include that.
So Tom, what condition are you talking?
There's a whole section on line 240.
Yep.
And 256.
So are you proposing to eliminate 240 through 258?
Not the whole thing, but just somewhere it said we would recommend removing the trail easement.
Why don't you strike the part that says remove the easement, leave the rest of the findings, add a PC finding that you want to keep that easement, and then we'll deal with it again at preliminary.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Question for the chair.
David?
We typically don't tweak consent agenda items unless we plan on pulling them from the consent agenda.
You were headed where I was.
I had a comment.
In a minute. Yep.
Okay.
So
Darren, can we just make a note of that when it comes back that we want to?
I think it's better to be addressed at preliminary, unless you want to pull it off this agenda and open up a public hearing.
So let's refresh a little bit right here. And Darren, I'm going to look to you. The easement in the sketch, the easement was recommended to be removed.
Okay.
That's what's in the sketch. And that's what we're reapproving tonight. This has already been approved once.
Right.
So noting that we may want to revisit it in preliminary is not inappropriate. I think Tom, we're at a point similar to what David just said, is if we're rewriting this, moving it out of consent.
Okay.
There is a line that says the conclusion of this trail easement should be reconsidered for the preliminary submission. So even though it's kind of going the inverse. it's still there and noted as it will be resolved in preliminary.
It's line
Okay.
54.
Yeah, I don't want to hold things up for the applicant. So if we just make a note that we want to reconsider that at preliminary.
Yeah, I mean, what's been warned on the agenda, just as a procedural point of order here, is that we're being asked to basically, sorry, I've got too many things open. We're being asked to reapprove an expired sketch plan. So I'm not sure if that opens up the door. This is already expired, right?
It's expired, yes, and I think, Tom, Darren did just read lines 254, 255, where it says you can reconsider it at preliminary. So I think your concern is covered.
Yeah, so just for the applicants to know that we might be reconsidering it and not to take it off the maps and all that, I don't know.
And I see that his engineer is on line too, so I believe he'll get that message, John Cunningham.
Okay.
So this is discussion. It's kind of up for them, but if commissioners are agreeable to it, there's a request to have us open up our cameras. I happen to be in the room, so I'm going to use Scott's camera. But Patrick, did you want to add something?
Actually, no, if we're gonna do it at preliminary, might as well just, then I can look back on my notes. I know this was a while ago, and I'm going by memory right now. I know that we were always supposed to have the trail because there was supposed to be the recreation area for units, but they said the feasibility, staff was like, feasibly having a trail going up there for people to recreate, let's have them recreate down here on site. So we've actually adjusted that in the plan, how the recreation area is down there on site. And that then, instead of that being a recreation area, we had to pay and have to do a conservation easement, and we're setting that aside for wildlife. That's why, and then I can't remember who, I'll have to look at my notes, there were commissioners that get rid of the trail because we don't want people going into the wildlife. That was, in a nutshell, what I remember. That was why that was done, but I would have to.
So this is, in my mind, we can and should reapprove the sketch, and then have it noted that trails and easements will be part of the preliminary.
The minutes will capture that.
Yeah.
Yep.
Tom, was that suffice for you?
Yeah, that's fine. I like I said, I don't want to hold things up. So
Well, I think it's valid to keep it on there, and it's good to keep it noted that there's a concern. Are there any other comments on the either public comment or consent agenda?
I would just make a recommendation that if Tom, if you're going to make a motion to approve the consent agenda, that maybe you memorialize your comment in your motion.
okay, thanks.
We have a participant in the room.
Okay.
You could, for your name, state your name for
My
the.
name is Betsy Dunn. I'm on the Conservation and Trails Committee. And I'm just, this was done in 2011, and I was nowhere near the Trails Committee. And I'm just wondering what trail that is. There.
It isn't a trail.
Not an existing trail. Let me see if I can pull up the plan
Where-
if we
what is
want to
it
go into
connected?
that.
Whatever.
It's access into the open space. That's what the intent was, to be able to generate access into a closed open space. That, if I remember correctly, is a cliff on one side and water on the other, and we were trying to work with Patrick to find a way to provide future access. Wasn't necessarily going to be a trail yet, but it was to make sure that we didn't have just a landlocked, area that didn't ultimately have the ability to get into it.
Access. Where is that? It doesn't say where this trail, this pond is. Or...
Well, if Darren can bring a map up, we can. Oh, it is up. Okay.
So the PUD development portion is here. This is Colchester Road 2A. So north is to the right of this plan.
Okay.
Then you've got Genties Road coming off here, going up to Highview and Lemoore Road. Sorry, Lemoore Road, then Genties Road, Highview, etc. So the development area is down low. There's a ridge here along the contours. The trail is within this 100-foot area shaded in green that connects all the way down to the rest of the open space, which is 150 something acres.
Is that on 2A?
So the property is accessed
I
off of
just covered.
2A, but the trail easement is along 289.
I believe we did a site visit
We
on
did.
that and walked it, and it was
It's rough. I
Rough.
mean, it's rough. I think this is really, and I think to Tom's point, this is to memorialize a, an access if we could figure out how to do it. But we didn't have to go back and then renegotiate. It was really with agreement to put something down so that if we figured out how to do it, it would be there.
To get to Colchester.
No, it's not Colchester Pond. This is that area adjacent to the Cirque Highway.
Betsy, I can brief you on it at another point.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah.
This will come back for preliminary.
Oh, good, great, thank you.
Yeah, we're not
Someone.
we're not done.
Okay.
Anything else? I'm looking for hands. All right. Then let's move on to the consent agenda. And I would look for a motion to approve or deny the consent agenda item.
I move that we approve the consent agenda, noting that we want to revisit the discussion on the trail easement.
That
Oh, okay.
hey, I got to do it once in a while. All those in favor? Aye.
I
Opposed? Motion carries 4-0. Okay. All right, now next item on our list is now is going to be a little. This is our discussion on regulations. This is our work. This is our more or less our work group. So now we're going to become a little less formal. To the point that it's. I mean, it's still our table and our meeting and so forth, but we're going to open things up and ask folks to, as possible, join us and for a little more open discussion. Do you have? Let's figure out what we want to talk first. Before we get going, I'd like to have the folks that are online introduce themselves so we know who's working with us tonight. Because quite frankly, I have to admit that I don't think I've met a good share of the folks that are involved.
And I would ask, there's a phone number, 802-391-0193, if I could have a name, that number.
So
And if you're muted on, it looks like it's a telephone call, so.
If you're muted on a phone, you can press *6 to unmute and then mute again. If you're listening in, if you're also connected on a computer, let us know that way.
So what committees do we have? Commissions do we have? We have Trails. Let's introduce anybody from Trails here to introduce themselves.
Yeah, I'm Alan Batula. I'm the chair of Conservation and Trails.
Excellent, Alan.
Betsy Dunn, I'm the clerk of our.
Excellent. Thanks, Betsy.
Ignorello, Conservation and Trails.
Who else we got? Zoning. Got anybody from zoning? Who the heck are you?
Gilby Norton.
We have somebody online too. I see Nick Martin
I see TJ Yendo on there.
and Tom, yeah.
Well, yeah, Tom Yendo from Zoning and the Energy Committee.
Excellent.
But I was going to let Nick go before me, but
Well, I don't know these names, so. Oh, also, if everybody is comfortable doing so, if you've got a camera, it would be nice to see you, so we actually know who we're speaking with sometimes.
Okay, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
There we go. Okay, this is Nick. You can merge my video with my phone number, please. But this is Nick with the zoning board.
All right, Nick. Thanks. We got Nick, Tom. Anybody else from zoning? How about?
I am expecting Mike Clayton.
Okay, maybe. Who else? Housing.
Katie is here, but you're. Yeah.
Should be Katie Ballard.
Sorry, just got unmuted. Katie Ballard from the Housing Commission.
All right. Welcome, Katie. Thank you. Who else? What else?
Energy.
Energy. Thank you.
I'm Dottie Bergendahl, Dorothy Bergendahl from the Energy Committee.
I'm Phil March from the Energy Committee.
I'm Mike Fink from the Energy Committee.
I'm Natalie Braun from the Energy Committee.
Thank you.
David Scopin from the Energy Committee.
Okay, we got a full crew. What else is?
Are we missing any groups?
Did anybody not be called out yet? All right. Well, thanks everyone for joining us on this. This is kind of a first for us, in that we're looking to really engage and set up these groups to engage with us and members of the public to look at different zoning requirements and initiatives and so forth, so we can have more inclusive effort. And we started with a I don't have it in front of me, Darren, if you can bring up the work plan.
Sure.
We started with a spreadsheet with a work plan of items that we had identified for the planning commission that we wanted to get to within, maybe not realistically within the next year, but this is what we wanted to attack and start with. And we had the full expectation that that list is somewhat fluid. And excuse me if I stumble a little bit, because I had actually tasked Josh with being the spokesperson for a lot of this, and he left me high and dry tonight. So
Josh is unavailable, is what he.
Yeah, that's true. No, Josh has done a real good job so far of starting to collate things as we get into this and act as the sort of the middle person for all the commissions and us. But we had a number of items that we identified that we wanted to work on, and ones that realistically you folks can help with. Some of this is, the zoning. I've been doing this for quite some time, and I don't recall another time that we asked the ZBA for their thoughts on uses and zoning changes and so forth at the beginning of the process. Usually we put some stuff together, and then we ask them for commentary. So we're changing it around a little bit. We're asking for things up front. We initially were going to be focusing from the PC perspective on the ETC Next as a project and a goal. And there are some challenges within infrastructure and so forth that we've got to really work out before we can drive the ETC Next as a whole unit. But we can start working on things like form and design and start enabling some of the zoning changes that we're going to need to do anyways, where they make sense, and make sure they make sense. In addition to that is the initiatives, as I mentioned, of uses. What uses should be allowed? Should we change the uses in all the areas, not just a list that somebody gave us of what we want to do or what they want us to do, but looking townwide at the use table, what makes sense? We're at a period of time where we need to make some positive economic effort as things change are coming up. So we want to make sure we don't lose economic opportunities. We want to make sure we're doing things in a constructive way without losing natural resources as wherever we can. Housing is a big deal. All these things everybody says are important, and we got to deal with them. So we're sort of trying to get you guys on the hook with us. So we're not, our approach wasn't to necessarily go to you and say, what do you think about anything? We really tried to start from a list. That doesn't mean that list can't change, and it already has changed to some degree, but we need to start someplace. And I think we've spoken, Josh or I've spoken with most of you, and at some point in time, and the idea was that we would try to have somebody from the PC liaison with you to participate and be able to bring back major concerns or ideas back to the PC, so nobody is caught by surprise at the end or something along those lines. And that's all still a work in progress. How your commissions and committees work and process these and come up with recommendations is really kind of up to you folks. Do you want to set up small subcommittees and task a couple of your members to go off and come back with recommendations and have your groups come together? Really, it's going to be what works best for your team. Sorry, your group. I'll probably slip and use the word team more than once, but that's just the way it is. Teamwork. Yeah, that's it. Collaboration is the key. Josh has made quite a bit of ground, covered quite a bit of ground so far on trying to help provide a framework for all of us to work with. And if you can go to his most recent list, he isn't here tonight, so he provided us with where he's gotten what he's tallied up so far.
We have that list?
Probably not. It just came out today, and I didn't want to start throwing things all over the place where we're sharing it tonight.
Okay.
It's a work in progress. It's not written in stone.
It's even been added to as of today.
So, these are some of the big topics that we want to try to get folks to engage with. I'm not going to read all the detail on it. We'll spread we can share this out. But one of the items is the ETC next zoning, the design standards, the old historic center placemaking, rezoning the Senecal and Ealer lands off from Vermont 15. So these are big topics that have been brought up. We have a bylaw modernization grant, allowable and conditional uses. That includes Saxon Hill. We're looking at performance standards. What are the pros and cons of this approach? What can we do with this? Inclusionary zoning, both in the ETC and throughout the town. And we still are going to be referring to the ETC because that is still a goal. But we're trying to get some of the groundwork done, some of the enabling zoning changes and the enabling basically framework in place so that when infrastructure-wise we can move forward, we're ready. So we have the Saxon Hill Master Plan, which is another topic that a lot of folks have expressed some interest in. We have the Town Plan Update, which realistically, the 2024 Town Plan Update has become probably our top priority because that document has to be done. It's not a want, it's a need. So that for the Planning Commission, that more or less has become our top priority. Doesn't mean we don't want to work on all of these things, and this is where you folks are going to come into play. Is what can you do? If you look at the list of things that we have on here, what can you do? What can you help request? What can you help work with us on?
Well, the town plan update, you Act 171, it's a lot about the fragmentation portion. Name those forests, non-fragmented, and the connectivity for the animals and everything. So that's one thing that has to go into the town plan by law.
And quite frankly, we've had that in every single major planning effort for the last probably 5-6 years. Fragmentation has been a consistent theme.
And
so we'll cover that. So
okay.
Those are the sorts of things that your group can bring focus on.
Exactly. And Saxon Hill, that would be one of the other things that that does.
So the town plan update has a number of items on that we need to focus on the separation with Essex Junction because we started to go the other way. Now we have to go back and clean that up. There needs to be a major overhaul of the trails and the path section. We continually run into conflict between established trails that are on the plan and established trails that are not on the plan but are on private property. And we fight for those, but there's only so much that we can do because they're not part of our formalized trails network. So these are sort of the things that the Trails Committee definitely can help with bringing some of that to the forefront. And how can we capture the information that we don't have? 40th and Allen rezoning is a topic that's been on the table for quite a few years. Again, the infrastructure has been a limiter there, but what can we do to help that area become more vibrant? Maybe this is an economic development committee effort primarily.
Well, we've started a pollinator garden down at the canal.
Beyond that, we start getting into the specifics of what we want the energy committee for. Energy efficiency. How do we start getting accommodate solar, electric charging? charging stations are coming up in every single application, but to our knowledge, there isn't still a consistency in technology. So putting a charging station in that nobody can use doesn't do much. So how do we start, getting to the point of having it be a standard item? These are these are things that we're looking for the commissions that work on this all the time to be able to help us bring real changes forward. And frankly, we don't want to. Our expectation is that when these recommendations come to us, number one, we still have to approve them, right? I mean, this is still the process. Still goes to the planning commission, then goes to the select board. But we're hoping that the additional public review that's going to be able to occur in these subcommittees, secondary committees, or whatever work groups, however this works out, that there'll be more opportunity for public review and collaboration, so that when a recommendation comes to the planning commission, it doesn't really have to be tweaked much. I mean, our hope is that it's ready for prime time with very little effort, very little adjustment. It may not, right? I mean, the anytime you put a request through, it's either going to be accepted or rejected. But we're hoping that everything will have worked out. Issues will have been brought back to us by our liaisons with you, so that maybe we have advance notice of some of the concerns, and we don't get caught by surprise. Nobody gets caught by surprise, and you don't spend a lot of time working on something that maybe won't go through.
Sure.
We do it right. We try to just keep the communication open so that, again, your recommendations will come through and make sense, and we'll just hopefully be able to embrace them and move them forward. And the another added benefit is when these advance up to the select board, they will have had a greater visibility. When it hits to the select board, we want to be able to say to them, Energy has looked at this, Trails has looked at this, Zoning has looked at this. It isn't just, the members of the planning commission pulling something out of the air. It is definitely a collaborative effort that's gotten to this point. I used the right word.
You knew what I was thinking.
So
thought too.
We have this list that Josh was working on, and I think Darren's been working on it. And do we have his list of assignments yet?
We do. It was in your packet, and I can find it.
You have it in
electronically or on the web as well. It's gonna be just a minute.
Work session.
Find that.
Okay, so we do have a collaboration maintenance matrix that he's setting up. And again, that one of the things we're looking to have. Josh is sort of acting as the point person for the PC with the other commissions. So if you have questions, you want to have changed people, you want to get different involvement, we're asking that you just give him, and I'm his backup on this, some notice so he can coordinate that and make sure that we don't have any gaps.
Who's Josh?
Josh is the vice chair, Joshua Knox.
Okay, thank you.
So we have on this list already, we have a number of items, and we've got folks that have reached out and indicated they want to work on this. So the next step really is, I think the next step in my mind, whatever your commissions want it to be. But I think the next step is to be able to have the commissions and boards start looking at these items and deciding how they want to work at it. Do they want to, you've got ideas on 171 already. So do you want to get your group together and have it as a full group? Or do you want to break out and have 2 or 3 people on your team, boards?
Okay.
Bring back a recommendation to your group. So really the recommendations to the planning commission should have a seal of approval by the full commission that's working on it, whether it's energy and trails, whether it's zoning and energy and trails. Everybody in those commissions ultimately should say, we endorse these changes and send them to the planning commission. How you get there, we got a lot more room to play. We embrace the idea of work groups on the planning commission. We often will have, 2 commissioners will go off and digest an idea or issue and come back and bring that recommendation back to the commission itself. So we have folks that can go off and do some of that work and bring back. Doesn't necessarily make things go faster, but it allows us to do a deeper dive a little more efficiently instead of trying to do it, at 6 or 6:30 on every other Thursday, every second, fourth Thursday. let's see. One of our next step was going to be to work on a work plan calendar. And that was sort of when we start setting timelines on what we'd like to see and how we want to do this. And I don't think we're ready for that just yet.
You do have a calendar in your packet that
Yep.
could start to lay some of that out, but it's fairly detail oriented.
Okay. I don't know that without the full commission, I don't know we should get into it. And it's worth noting that we have a new community development director that will be starting at the end of the month. So some of this process may evolve. But I think, yes.
Do we get a package so that we know?
So the packets are posted online on the agenda center. The the charges were not published because they just came together today. But we can send that out, and will be included in future packets for each of these commissions as well.
Okay, so the packet was on the Google Drive? I didn't see it.
It's not on your Google Drive for Conservation and Trails. It's on the Planning Commission's packet on the agenda center of the town.
So,
website.
realize that this is the beginning. Right?
I'm
So
just to sign up. Oh, I just online.
We're figuring out how to do this now. And your question about getting the packets is a good one and a timely one. How do we get the information to your commissions and your boards? And I think that is Darren and Sharon can work that out and find out the best way to get it to you so that you have all the information. None of this is like only zoning can see this and only energy. This is one packet of stuff. So we've got to make sure we don't have lots of different copies floating around. But I think I'm going to defer to Darren and Sharon and let the staff figure out the best way to get that distributed.
I will ask Dina, our administrator, to send an email out to us so that you can sign up on the agenda with the agenda packets. So you'll know how to get there.
Great, thank you so much, Sharon.
And again, to the extent that we can, staff will also be giving you this information through your commission's packets as well.
Oh, good.
Or whatever process you have set up.
So I think this, again, if whatever's needed, we'll figure out how to get there. This is not a short trip. This is if this works, if we can all make this work well, there's no reason that this is a one-time shot. This can be a new way of operating. But so it's going to take some trial and effort. It's going to take some folks saying this works for me, this doesn't work for me, and we figure out how best to keep things moving.
I think it's great.
It may not once we start throwing the stuff at you.
Well, that's okay. I mean, we'll tweak it as we go along, but we want to be productive and we want to get it right so that it makes it flow better to the select board. Let's then work on
It actually is in my mind, I'm going to take the select board out of it. To me, it makes the flow better so that the community gets the changes that they want in a timely fashion. Because our changes right now can take years to put into play with all the cycles we have to go through. So one of the things we're really hoping to be able to do is to respond to community wants and needs in a more timely fashion. So we don't have to wait for a town plan update. We can do this, and this, if it works, we're going to be more agile. Let's see. So as I said, we're working towards a work plan calendar, and what our expectation with that is it's going to be that we have an actual literal calendar that we're going to try to get things through. And we're going to set some targets and timelines, and hopefully we can get some of this stuff delivered back. And your commissions will be able to tell us we can do it in that time frame, or we need it. It's going to be out to here. Again, we're making this up as we go, and we're not limited to what we used to do. We're going to see if we can make this better all the way around. So I'm about ready to shut up now for a few minutes and let anybody else start chatting. Darren, you can go first.
Yeah, and I did want to mention on the calendar specifically, there are some dates and deadlines that have to be in there because of statute and some of our requirements for how plans and zoning updates are noticed. So those are in there and those are firm. But outside of that, there's a fair amount of flexibility in how the work groups operate and what timelines they do. And the other thing is that not every element of all of these projects needs to be done by the town plan update or the time we do zoning regs. Get as far as you can and move it as far as you can with consensus, and then things can be revisited.
Yeah.
And then looks like Katie has her hand up.
Yeah. You all set?
I'm all set.
Ned?
No, not yet.
Okay. Katie, you're on.
Thank you. I just wanted to start by saying my apologies that the Housing Commission hasn't been more involved in some of these conversations with the separation conversation that changed a couple months ago. There's been a lot that we've been trying to navigate in terms of that piece for our work moving forward. But I did just want to share, as you're aware, we do have an inclusionary zoning sub work group that is part of the Housing Commission that we kind of help kind of facilitate through Mia and Mark, but we do have someone from, I believe, your planning commission and the village on that. And I know that they would be more than happy to help join that group. That said, I will definitely be bringing this to my commission and sharing to be able to kind of provide some feedback, but I definitely know that there was a lot of interest around being as involved as possible in some of those housing conversations. So I know there's a lot of interest, and I would be happy to help in any way to kind of figure out who from my commission might be able to support the various conversations. And lastly, I did just want to share, since we will be looking at separation in a year, the Housing Commission has kind of decided on 3 big priorities for the next year, which would include the inclusionary zoning in the town and the village. The other one is a housing trust fund conversation, which does kind of connect to inclusionary zoning as an avenue for where the money might go. And that is something we're really working on in the town as well. And lastly, we're working on the rental registry and community outreach piece. So I just wanted to share those are kind of our priorities for the next year while we're figuring out the separation piece. And if there's any way that those connect to kind of your plan and those that we may not see, we'd be happy to engage in any way possible.
Thank you. Anybody else?
It just
Ned?
Well, yeah. While we're on the housing, I had, one of our items is inclusionary zoning, and I had sent Josh a note, which probably got lost somewhere, that I would work. I've sat in on a lot of housing commission's meetings on inclusionary zoning, and I'm willing to keep down that thing. I guess a general comment, and you had a great introduction. Is so much of this what we want to do is interrelated. We're charged with providing energy efficient housing. We're providing affordable housing, reasonably attractive housing, which sometimes is a bigger challenge in the town than we like to admit. Energy performance standards. How do you raise the energy performance standards and not drive the price of that housing off the chart? These are where a lot of these work items are really kind of interrelated, and that's going to be the puzzle for everyone, is to balance all of that as we work together.
I see that with when you're developing a housing area as well, as how does that affect our forests, and are we doing any fragmentation, or what are we doing to avoid messing up with connectivity for the animals as well? And is it near wetlands, and how are we protecting those when you're making housing as well? So I think all those go into it as well.
Hey, these sounds like great conversations for you guys to have and bring to us. Huey.
Yeah. I only heard half of what Katie said. Sounded like she was talking from the Grand Canyon somewhere. I these Zoom meetings I could go on about those things. Anyway, inclusionary zoning. I've heard that over and over and over again. New term, not a lot about it. Anybody got a booklet about some good solid information stuff about inclusionary zoning? Sounds to me like it's I'll say the word, controversial topic, because it's different. Okay, so so you have something, Darren?
Yeah, Hubie, I can send you some of the stuff that is been put together by that working group and sort of general information as well as any of the details you want. The basic premise is simply that when new development happens, a certain portion of it be set aside for a certain income level. Folks, households of a certain income level. There's a lot more that goes into it than that, but the basic idea is making sure that the whole community has housing that is provides housing for all income ranges, so that it's not simply all on the high end, all on the low end, and that it's integrated as much as possible rather than segregated. So that's the basic premise.
Okay, I guess I understand, the basic premise. It's the guidance that goes with that.
Right. There's a lot of details.
That's where I can see where those could be some interesting hills to climb.
Yep. And the
interesting collaborative conversations.
Yeah.
Very good.
Buzzwords. Anything else, you any thoughts? What are your thoughts on this?
No, that's for the moment. That's good.
Okay. I'm going to start going down the list just because that's the way I do things. So what the heck? Hey, Nick, you're up. You're top of my list on here. What are your thoughts? How's this working? How's this look for you at this point?
It's looking good. I am interested in learning more and actually getting our boots on the ground and starting the actual work. The zoning board met earlier this month, and we divided and conquered all of these topics and signed up for our points of interest. So Hubie has a couple, I have a couple, Tom has a couple. Our other member, our only other member right now is Mike. He has a couple. And so, once those meetings are announced, I would really look forward to seeing that master calendar, so we can get going on this.
Well, I'm going to push back on you a little bit and say, don't wait for us to set up a meeting because we're not. You are. So the master calendar is one thing, but I would really look for you folks to start deciding how you want to work these, how you want to work with us a little bit, because it really is. How does it work for your group team? How does it work best for you folks? I mean, do you want to do this as a single commission? Do you want to do work? We really need you guys to help feed back into this process. So, I guess I would say don't wait. Let's just pull the trigger. Okay. While you digest that.
Let's do that master schedule, and we'll go from there. That's step number one.
Well, no, actually, I'm gonna again. The master schedule itself is gonna take some time. So I really encourage everyone to take the step now, figure out how you want to work these, and come up with a meeting process for yourselves. Because I don't want to tell you how to do this. I don't want to tell you how to meet. I don't want to tell you how to look at these items. I want you guys to tell us how you're going to do it.
That's it.
Yeah, no, I meant hold. And that really, and Nick, will help. I don't want to tell you how to do this. And that really, I think you know your stuff. You know your purview. You know your team. You know your how you can meet and what tolerance you have for meetings and so forth. So I'll work with you on that. I mean, I think I told Josh I'd be happy to work with the zoning board as a liaison. So let's pull the trigger and move on some of this. Alan.
Hey, actually, Patty had her hand up first. I might rather let her go.
I'm going down the list right now. I saw Patty, and Betsy's also had her hand up. So
okay,
everybody.
Thank you. So do you envision that these working groups will have a member of the planning commission on them for the entire time at the beginning? How do you see that working? Because a lot of these working groups are not composed of planners. So we're not going to really understand the process. It's going to be difficult for us to get going without some guidance from your commission directly.
Yeah, and I'm hoping that we'll be able to, my goal is to have a planning commissioner be able to work with you, because we have a limited staff. Staff's not going to be able to engage in all these work groups. We can look to staff to have some guidance on what we need to work on. But we have list of items, and like Katie had a list of working items that she wants to work on, the housing committee wants to work on. the slate's kind of clean right now, you know, and if you want somebody to come in, like I'll volunteer myself on this. If you want me to come in and sit with you guys and say what has worked for us, what we think might deliver, I'm absolutely happy to do that. I think we want to try to get your commissions to engage on these topics, whichever topics you feel you can engage on, and find out and decide what you feel you can output. You know, if it's a question, we don't have enough information on this, then that feeds back to us and or staff, and we get that information. I'm not looking at a firm process at this point. I'm looking to try to see where we go. What steps do we all need to make? And what you guys learn or what we learned will help us all move this forward.
Okay, so I guess my input then would be, at least in the beginning, if somebody from the planning commission could sit in on that group and participate to get things going, I think we'd be be able to get going a lot faster and in the right direction right off the bat.
Okay.
And my intention is also, as a member of staff, to help get some of these working groups going as well, give you sort of the outline and the resources, and then let you drive the conversation as much as possible, with or without us, as needed.
Sharon?
As available.
And I just want to suggest that maybe some of these groups work together to start to help each other get off. If you have elements in common that you're both interested in.
And I think that's one of the items that Josh had communicated, that there is overlap in a lot of these working groups. So it does not need to be limited.
Right.
So the folks that reached out, and Josh has that group, this is where they're driving. So we'll circle back on this. And I think, to take your point, is maybe the next step is, when Josh is available, we can work with staff and set up the first round of meetings and see if we can put something on the books to actually make this go forward. And then from that, it should be self-regulating. To keep going, I'm coming back to the room for a minute.
Okay.
Ken.
I'd suggest that you be as unambiguous as you possibly can be in terms of what you're expecting from each of these work groups. You said you wanted to get something from each that you could run with, I think was the term you used. That means that planning commission participation isn't optional. It needs to be there, or staff. Otherwise, what you get will be blurry and not so easy to work with, I'm pretty sure. So that's the first thing I would definitely recommend. Specific recommendations, I think, are very, very important. My committee, for example, has charge, or its mission is wide. Historic, architectural, archaeological resources. I mean, that's a lot, besides the natural resources that we typically talk about, or the recreational resources that we typically talk about. There's a lot we haven't done yet that we're trying to start to do. So there could be a lot of detail that could come out of that. I don't know very much about planning or zoning, so without somebody there to make sure that what we produce makes sense, I'm going to echo what Alan, my chairman, was saying. Yeah, that's really problematic. Just this meeting alone, I thought we were going to be making recommendations today. I heard some, but I'm realizing now that no. I think what we're just doing today is saying that there will be separate, and help me with this, there will be separate work groups. Not sure how many or who's on them, but that's what we're talking about.
We are trying to set up a process of multiple work groups to be able to approach this from multiple angles. Yes. The point about what we're looking at is our starting point is the work plan that the planning commission came up with originally, which Darren, that Excel spreadsheet that Darren put up. That's our rough working target, is the details on these items. So understandably, that energy and natural resources and trail covers a lot of area. We had identified a number of areas or pieces that we needed to focus on due to the recent development initiatives and or ETC Next or whatever. So it's not like a blank slate that we're looking for. Although if your groups have items that you want to have included because you know that they're hot topics or you know that they're going to be very important, this really is the time to introduce them as
Like
well.
agrivoltaics, things like this.
Right. And so it's hard today to be able to give you a very definitive bullet list of what needs to come out of your groups, because we haven't done this before. So I mean, we're looking for some guidance back from you as what you feel you can do. And we had some really good feedback tonight. So I mean, this is specificity, and what we're asking for is one thing that I don't think we can walk away from. And
So let me just throw in a few things that I'm particularly interested in. I'll try to be general about it. Certainly some newer technologies. You know, we do solar farms a lot nowadays, but there's a lot of experimentation now going on with solar farms that are much higher off the ground and spread farther apart. And they work more efficiently and provide grazing and other uses at the same time. Things like that. Historic preservation is something that is really important, I think. And that I don't think enough attention is being spent on. And what else do we have? Talking about lately, conservation and trail.
Trail mapping with the GIS.
Well, the trail mapping is certainly something and that was already mentioned, so I don't really need to go there. That's already on the list, I think.
Water quality.
Water quality is becoming a huge issue. We've had a number of outbreaks, and you know the thing about water quality is that it's not a point source, so the whole water basin impacts water quality. So that's a very, very interesting and hard to deal with topic. You know, we have had the blue-green algae at Indian Brook, and we'll probably have them again this year, for example. So there's quite a bit, and yes, I agree. You're not going to be able to put every single thing on the list. We have to do that. But the questions might be, you know, what additional things do we need to focus on in terms of that might affect planning as an open end item.
And ideally as well, of us, the planning commission, giving you a charge. This collaborative process means that if you hit to a point that you're not sure about, you let us know as well. Not just a planning commission, but this is an open process back.
And if there's a representative from either the commission or staff there, we're good to go.
Yeah. So and we may not always be able to do that, but yes, Betsy.
So I've done this kind of thing
Yep.
before. As a nurse. We got trained in TQM, which is total quality management. And
TQM, CQM, yeah.
Same, all part of the same thing anymore. But we had a person that the team that the planning commission, usually the planning commission. The planning commission is there, and you have a person who is taking on one of those major pieces, and they attend that meeting, and you get people from energy there, housing there, and whatnot. You all can look at the problem and from different points of view and come out with the right answer.
Yep. And what I don't want to do is I don't want to limit this to say that you have to do it in a certain way.
No.
Right. And if your group, let's say you don't have your people, your team can't meet regularly, or they can't meet easily off your scheduled timeframes. Well, you might decide that a work group of 2 people can go and do task A and report and come back with a report for your bigger group. And that's what I don't want. I want people to be able to be creative in some of this. There always should be some public presentation and public discussion of what you're advising. That's a win for the town, because we're providing an additional opportunity or opportunities for the public to engage in the discussions before things come up. So I don't want to limit. I don't want to tell you to say only do it this way or only do it that way. What I really would like to see is your groups come up with a creative way to get to get a discussion going. And you may have a list of things that's 100 pages long, but you may, as we start going into this, it may be that 2 pages gets done for this year. And we often use the term low-hanging fruit because it's something that is easy to do with the parameters that exist today. Other things get put into a parking lot because we don't have the infrastructure or the knowledge to deal with them yet. So I mean, this is really all what our groups do anyways, and it's a process. And if we all work on this, we make the process work better. And I think, Ken, your point of having specificity and Alan's idea of knowing what we're looking to do, they're dead on. We can't work in a vacuum.
You want recommendations that you can work with? I think we'll need to have that participation, I'm afraid.
Yep. Well, don't be afraid. I mean, this isn't an afraid thing. This is a positive step, and that allows that collaboration back and forth. And that's we are envisioning that as well. So your point is there. It's not a burden. It's an expectation. Hang on, Paul. I want to make sure all the the committee members have a chance to speak is what I'm trying to get through. David Scopin? See one of the,
Energy.
yeah, energy. David.
Yeah, I raise my hand?
No, you didn't. I'm going down the list. I'm Mr. Villamere for people who went through the Essex school system, and I'm volunteering people as we go.
Well, I certainly look forward to getting going on this with my group, and I believe we have all the names in place. It's certainly a daunting task from my point of view because I know little to nothing about a planning commission's operation, but I certainly understand everything that has been said and agree with it. And I'm ready to go when the rest of the group is setting up times to get together and looking at the problems or tasks that we face. So
Excellent.
I have to say.
And David, I would say don't feel you have to limit yourself to the way that the PC does things.
Oh no, I won't.
Right.
So Dusty has now designated me Mr. Villamere.
Yes.
I see Will Dodge has joined, but I also see Phil March and Dottie Bergendahl and Natalie. So Will, I'll start with you as the chair, but then we'll try to get to everybody in your energy committee. And Will, you're still muted if you are talking and able to hear us.
Okay.
Not hearing from Will. We'll go to who was it?
Probably
Phil. Go ahead.
Again, I'm Phil March. Yeah, I'm looking forward to working with the Planning Commission. I sort of echo what Alan said earlier. It would be nice to have sort of a liaison to start with, someone who is a planner working with us to give us some direction. But I think there's a lot of mutual interests as far as I'm concerned. For my part, on the committee, I focus more on weatherization and keenly interested in the residential building energy standard and all the challenges that go along with that, as well as aspects about having newer buildings solar ready is a big interest of mine as well. So there are definitely mutual interests, and I'd like to start working on that soon.
Excellent.
Dorothy or Dottie. And Dottie, you're still muted.
Got to find the right off switch or on switch, whichever you want to call it. Well, I am looking forward to trying to help with this. There's a lot of stuff I don't know because I don't know what building standards are at the current time. With weatherization, we're basically dealing with buildings that already exist and depending on their age are in dire need of bringing up their standards. So I don't know what the current standards are. The main thing I would bring to this is someone who already has solar. I've had it for 7 years.
Okay. You have some expertise.
Great. Thanks, Dottie. Natalie.
Yes. Oh boy,
You're muted.
Natalie, you've muted again. Try unmuting. I think you almost had it.
Yeah. Sorry, David,
Use one computer. Talk through David's computer.
Sorry. Are you able to hear me now?
Yep.
Okay, great. David and I are we're sitting in the same room. So yes, all I can do is ditto what the other energy committee members have said, I'm very interested in this. I also happen to be a climate activist as well. So I bring that delightful skill and interest to the committee or groups.
Thank you,
Okay,
Natalie.
thank you.
Will, looks like you've just rejoined. Are you able to speak now?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, everyone. I'm sorry I came into the meeting a little bit late, but I get the gist of what you're looking for. And I think the thing that I have to offer is I re-upped. I did my interview last week with the select board to re-up for the Essex Energy Committee. And I think it went well. And part of the reason I think it went well is because my sense of it was that the select board is interested not just in improvements in energy, improvements in transportation, improvements in weatherization, but generally in reducing the amount of greenhouse gases that are emitted from Essex. They asked us if we knew what the number was. We don't know what the number is. That's part of the task of our committee. But as far as I'm concerned, part of our mission here should be to go beyond the strict confines of each of our subject matters and be thinking more about what the role is of Essex in relation to Vermont, to the country, and to the planet. So I leave you with that.
So it sounds like you're volunteering a lot of time and help. That's what I heard.
I'll do what I can. Certainly committed.
Excellent.
Thanks, Will.
He's got the energy.
Yep. And then Tom, I didn't forget you, but I left you for last since you are on both energy and zoning board. And I know you've already spoken, but did you want to add anything else?
So, from what I've heard from Dusty, that you want us to get going. But the last time that I participated in the updated town plan through the planning commission, there were documents that you gave us to go through and to edit. And to not only edit, but put in our thoughts from, and at that time, I was just a regular taxpayer putting my thoughts into the renewed town plan, the new planning commission documents. This is great that you've got all of us different committees on this and you want us to move forward, but we're running blind, just like without any documents. What is there for us to start commenting on?
The existing.
Because then you need to give us that stuff.
Yep, that's a fair point. I mean, I think Tom, your idea is in the past, and this is sort of a see if I use the word right, a paradigm shift.
Right. Oh, that's fine. But
Yep.
but you know, you want us to move forward, but we're sitting blind with a blank piece of paper, and that does no good to anybody. Because then you're going to get garbage in equals garbage out. So you need to give us something to start with.
Agreed. And that's part of the packet that the staff will figure out how to deliver. Yep. The existing regulations, the existing town plan, our starting point, which I agree that it's not precise because we don't know how to be precise on it yet. But our starting point is the work list that we came up with, and that Josh and I have shared with all the different commissions. And that is a Excel spreadsheet with maybe a dozen items on it that are our targets that we're trying to do for town plan, grants, and regulations that we know need to be updated. So the idea, like the town plan itself, in the past, we've done the town plan, come up with a completed packet or section, and then given it to somebody for discussion and review. We're actually looking this time for folks to say, I want to redo the energy section in the town plan. I want to redo the housing section in the town plan. There's a set of trail maps. Those need to be updated. I mean, and the town plan isn't the only piece that we're looking at. I mean, the zoning regulations have use tables. You know, how accurate are those? What should they be? Is the planning commission the only ones that can comment on that? I don't think so. You know, I'm looking to folks that have some knowledge in the community. I'm looking, the planning commission is looking for some input. And maybe the recommendation, maybe what comes out of the commissions isn't hard recommendations. Maybe what it ends up being from a particular topic is that we don't know, we want this to be included, we don't know how to move forward on it. I mean, this is the part of the communication that comes back. And to Ken's point and to Alan's point, a planning commissioner can help facilitate some of these discussions. But I don't think it should be just the planning commission's goals that we're aiming for here. This is a community-wide effort. So I know I've had discussions with Hubie before about different zoning things, and I'd like to hear those. I don't want to hear them after we've put in a year's worth of work and then let's do something completely different. I'd rather hear them at the beginning before we do a year's worth of work. Ken, you ran through a number of items that are important to you. You know, maybe they're not all on the table for now, but it's a whole lot easier to hear about some of these things at this point than it is when we have a completely formatted document and we're going through and just doing edits. So it really is. And Tom, I'm glad you brought up the town plan as a document, because it is the starting point for the town plan exercise, but it's not the only thing that we have on the table. Sharon?
So the town plan is, since the planning commission has changed their focus, primary focus right now to the town plan, that's a good place, I think, for these to start and look at and do exactly what you said. You know, review that, and if you are, you know, if you want to propose a change in a chapter or a paragraph or something, that's the type of documentation the planning commission is looking to see back. So create a work product. They might take it, they might not. The ETC next, I don't know if all the groups got them. I know some groups got them. That's another great resource, which is going to be bring a big change to our town center area. And even though it's kind of, you know, it's secondary now, it's still going to take a lot of work, and that's going to take a lot of time. And that's the biggest thing I think for everybody to understand, is to not get frustration, because planning is time, it takes time.
Yeah.
And, you know, by the time you get something done, it might be all undone by the time it gets to where it needs to be. So I hear everybody's concerns, and they're all good, but I wouldn't be freaking out too much. Darren created many memos on different topics that were on the list, and I know that, you know, I distributed them to my group, and I don't know, I believe they went to a lot of other groups, but that's a good example of what you guys might create with the topics of your passion.
Okay, Darren?
And I'll add to that, you know, Sharon, you covered a lot of what I wanted to say, actually. So we are, you know, there's starting to be some refinement of scope for each of these projects, partly through staff sort of putting suggestions out there, partly through the planning commission talking about what needs to happen from their perspective. But there's certainly opportunity for, like Dusty said, input from everybody. And it's an iterative process. So we'll start with what we've got right now. You know, a few months in, you might realize, you know what, we started talking about, you know, permitted and conditional uses, but really this is going to end up being an economic development issue, and we got to look at it from this framework. So that doesn't mean there can't be a change in how you know, go forward with this as you discover things, with the understanding also that you want to avoid some mission creep of, you know, try to stay focused as much as possible. But it's, you know, it's like Sharon said, a process and a time-consuming one, and iterative. So we do have some materials ready. We've just been waiting for the groups to convene and get organized before we start dumping information on you. So now that this is happening, get ready.
So I think you hit on a key point, Darren, and I think everybody, Ken, Hubie, Alan, anybody, and Tom, anybody that thinks we do this differently, please, we're looking for you to comment on that and provide input. This process, I fully expect this process to evolve and to change. It may change monthly, hopefully not, but it may change every few months. We may change that we have to change a focus, or maybe membership isn't available, whatever. And this is where, you know, the process will ebb and flow a little bit on this. Planning is a long-term effort, as Darren said, and it allows for some flex in the way we work. We've got two folks online who are here who want to speak, and I'm going to start with Patty. Patty, go ahead.
Yes, I like what you said in the beginning of the meeting, Dustin, when you said that we need to discuss uses maybe for all areas. But what I really want to say after listening to all of you is that the CCRPC, there might be somebody on that committee, our regional planning commission that could possibly come to one of these meetings, and everybody said such good things. I like what Mr. Yando said, because the public, if they have ideas and want to contribute, we would like a copy of it too, if the staff is making a copy of the list. The reason I would like a copy is I like to do research, and I didn't research the CCRPC, but I researched the WRC, Wyndham Regional Planning Commission. They provide a lot of help to groups, especially the zoning bylaws, specifically to facilitate the creation of affordable housing. I researched it not knowing what inclusionary zoning was, and I didn't know if Essex had an inclusionary zoning ordinance. But you don't have to answer. I'm trying to research all this stuff because I don't know a lot about planning. What I do know, and I'll throw it out quickly, each town out of the 9 towns of the WRC got money, and they apply by November 1st, and their bylaw modernization grant is by November 15th. Brattleboro is getting a walk bike master plan. That's what they came up with, to evaluate pedestrian and bicycle system to create a prioritized action plan. Vernon created an outdoor recreation master plan to assess and prioritize how to innovatively use current recreation assets, develop underutilized assets, and identify potential areas to create new diverse opportunities. As for the energy, John Castongaway is Vice President and Chief Innovator Officer. He's Chief of Innovation at Green Mountain Power. He says that there are webinars at Green Mountain Power any of our groups could go to attend, even the Planning Commission, where you learn about energy storage, learn how battery storage programs can help you stay powered up, while also reducing carbon emissions and lowering costs for all customers, Green Mountain Power customers, of your regional planning commission. Anybody on the regional commission or individual commission that is interested in learning about improving your home's resiliency while cutting costs and cutting carbon, because now in Vermont, resiliency zones and adaptation is the name of the game. We're already in climate change. It's no turning back. Thank you.
Paula? Thanks, Patty.
Back when you were talking with Ken, or maybe it was somebody online at this point, one of the advantages to having the various committees and commissions have a public piece of what they're doing is that it gives the whole community an opportunity to find out what's important, where things are leading. And one of the things that was driving this was we had to get the town plan, the most recent town plan done before we could then address the regulations.
Mm-hmm.
And so one of the things that the people should be considering on the various committees is looking at the town plan, but also looking at what regulations might affect what they want and putting enough teeth in the regulations so that whatever the regulations are, they're accomplishing what we want them to accomplish.
Yes. Good point.
I just want to clarify that we have a town plan in the ETC Next Town Center Master Plan. And I believe you were referring to the ETC Next. Are you not?
What? No, I was talking about
The town plan.
the town,
Okay.
the town.
Just wanted to make
The last, I mean, normally we make town plans and so forth, but,
Right.
and this is all really good. So I'm going to take the next, say 10 minutes, because we're going to wrap up targeting and finishing up at 8. I'm going to just sort of discuss some next steps. Before I do that, David, Raphael, Tom, or Ned, do you guys have any commentary you'd like to add or can add to this?
Nothing for me.
No.
I have a question. As usual, I signed up for the Saxon Hill Master Plan, so I would like some guidance as to what the product should be in terms of scope and complexity. Or I can get the group together and we can propose something. I can bring it back and see if you guys are okay with that.
I'm kind of leaning towards that approach.
Okay, so
If we were to wait to have I'm sorry, go ahead. I didn't mean to cut you off.
that's fine. I think that's my answer. So then my next question is, you said public participation was important. So my thought is that the other members, we would pick one of their committees and we would try to get public input through their regular meetings. Does that seem appropriate?
And it doesn't have to be a single committee.
Right, but we have to pick one. So like for Saxon Hill Master Plan, say Trails Committee is part of it. We would use the Trails regular meeting to collect public input on the Saxon Hill Master Plan. Is that?
That's
good.
right in line with what we've been aiming towards. And to further that, it doesn't have to be just the trails. So that Saxon Hill Master Plan could be vetted with, a couple different groups if it made sense.
Yeah, I think there are other. Darren wants to chime in here.
Oh, I'll wait till you're done, Tom. I just wanted to make sure we didn't. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Well,
say
I agree. It's not just trails, right? Whatever committee signed up to be part of that, they would be part of it, and we could meet with their full board, for sure. But it has to be part of a regular meeting to get public input. Is my thought.
Agreed.
And the one thing I'll add to that is it doesn't have to be at a regular, meeting of any of those committees. It can be a specially warned meeting that is, representatives from all those groups, etc. You can do it however you want once you get the working group set up, just like any planning process that we've done. For instance, the firearms ordinance touched a bunch of different things, and it had its own meetings and its own public input and its own, review process. So all options are on the table as long as there's participation by those committees, because those have been the designated representatives that the select board's appointed to work on these topics, and their input should be represented in the final product.
Okay, so yeah, this is all what I thought. I just wanted to make sure you guys are nodding your heads.
Yep. No, this is fine. And this is the sort of input and feedback that should come from every group as we start going through this. Is what works for that group and what do we need? What confirm this? So I'd like to propose the next steps, and is for Josh and myself to work with the staff to set up the first round of meetings based on the list that Josh has been putting together, and reach out and get those working groups up, running, and at the same time, we'll have in those discussions to see what sort of clarity is needed. And I think Alan and Ken both brought this up: is what is the mission, what is the scope? And I think we can decide if we have enough information on certain topics to move forward, or if we need to come back and say, Planning Commission, what do you want us to deliver on this? But let's have this discussion. Let's start digesting what we have, and see where we can go with this. Yes.
I have a quick question on timing. Has there been any recently passed legislation that needs to be addressed soon that would impact some of the decisions that might be made by some of these committees?
Good question, and I think that's one of our next steps is also going to be to look at this timeline. And Darren referenced that there are a number of regulatory and or legislative items that have to be addressed at a certain time frame. Once those are fully clarified, we would then be feeding that out to all the groups as well, and that would help fine tune some of the process.
Yep. And I can give a quick summary. So Act 171 was passed in 2016. It says that in the next time a town does their town plan, you have to consider forest blocks and wildlife corridors as they define them. That's one of them. Enhanced energy planning isn't a requirement, but the town has created an enhanced energy plan, and so we want to incorporate that by reference in the next time we do the town plan update. What else? We got the bylaw modernization grant that Patty was talking about in Southern Vermont. It was a statewide grant that requires us to do some level of changes to the zoning regulations to encourage more housing in smart growth areas and walkability in those areas. So we're already doing that work. So we'll just be committed to doing that on their timeline, which is roughly in line with the town plan update. And then again, the town plan itself has to be updated. There's a lot of statutory requirements that go into that just on its own, like updating census information, anything else that's changed, that the town plan has to cover since the last time we did it. And one other thing I wanted to mention is that the Regional Planning Commission and staff are definitely going to be focused on those specific requirements in the town plan update. And we'll be making sure that those get addressed, providing the information and the data that you need to have those discussions and put together the work product.
Anything specific on the whole cannabis thing, sales and so on, there will be adjustments as well?
Yeah, that's something that so far staff have been able to handle fairly well within our existing zoning, but there are a couple of small areas that we'd love some feedback on in terms of how it's handled. And part of the problem is there's some uncertainty with what the state legislation says and how we interpret it. So
basically, they're leaving it to us to do a smoke test on this.
Exactly, and leaving up to individual towns to figure that out and go through their own.
Trickling from the legislature.
Did you say that? Did you say you're gonna do a smoke test? Okay.
So to circle back on this a little bit, I think this to put this in the other world that I work in, these first round of meetings are essentially going to be scope discussions with the people that are involved. What do we feel can be done? What do you need? Let's work with each other to find out what the scope of the request is. What you feel can be done with the people that you've got, and what's missing, and we'll figure it out from there. See what resources we need to add and how we go about it.
Will had his hand up briefly.
Did he?
I just wanted to ask Darren if you had a theory one way or the other about is an update to the enhanced energy plan a requirement of the town plan update?
No, enhanced energy planning is optional. Energy in general is still a required element in a town plan. So if there's any data that's changed, we'll update that as, we're required to do that. It's the, mapping out your renewables generation and your, EV, use and all that stuff that is the step above. And what that gets a town, if you go through that process, which we did, is substantial deference in the Public Utilities Commission process of citing these larger renewable generation facilities. So we've already done the work. We just have to add it into our town plan and say we did it.
Well, and we have to disaggregate it from the...
Correct. Yes, because it was a joint plan with the village. Now we're separating. Thankfully, the RPC, I think the RPC will have to help us separate that data because it was aggregated originally.
So I think we beat the heck out of this so far. I'm extremely, pleased with the amount of people that engaged on this tonight. So it's very encouraging. And I think we're heading in the right direction on this. And I think obviously people have very astutely pointed out we need to fine tune some things and help bring some clarity to what the requests are. And we'll get there with your help. So with that, is any last minute comments on this before we got a couple business items to touch base at the end of our meeting? But I'll take any last minute notes or anything. Yes, sir.
Quickly, what would help me is if we have. Okay, Scott. Okay, good. What would help me is if we focus on tasks rather than work. I can do a lot of work without producing anything, but if I have a task to do, I can focus.
Yep.
So if you can express things like, even if it's a general task, like provide recommendations for update to part X of the town plan, fine, but it's a task I can now focus on. I know exactly what I need to accomplish there. That will be helpful for me.
And I think we're potentially just using different terminology, and this is where the scope is going discussion is coming into play. It's not just the planning commission deciding what those tasks are. It's the planning commission and your groups deciding on what the scope is and what those tasks could be.
Right.
So I think you're really looking at this in a very productive way, and I appreciate that.
Thanks.
Last. Go ahead, Patty, if your hand's still up.
Yes, I would like to suggest that when somebody puts together the idea of having a meeting, they give us a choice of possible times and dates. Because I don't know who's organizing this.
Well, we can certainly let I mean, I was suggesting that the staff and myself and Josh put the first meetings together, but I would absolutely be willing to let your groups and your commissions put this first one together and reach out to us for.
I'm just saying, just don't pick a day and a time and think that everybody's going to be able to come.
No, that's yeah, understood. That's meetings. You go for try to get 80%.
So can we get experts in there looking at it as well? People who have expertise.
Like what?
Things. Well, I took a webinar, 6-week class kind of webinar, on town plans. And the fellow who ran the webinar said, I am free, and you can use me, and I'll look at plans, and I'll help you out what you need to put into it that's not there.
So I would be careful of doing scope creep, and I'll use that term, because the ask, even if it's not detailed yet, is going to be more narrow than update the town plan for us.
No, that's not.
So section. So if your group wants to reach out and see if somebody can come in and talk to you about it, absolutely.
Okay.
You know, there's experts that people know a lot about this stuff, and bring them in.
Okay.
You know, you want to talk about architecture? I would invite Paula to a meeting.
There you go.
You know, and presentation and so forth. So absolutely look for using additional resources. This is where I don't want to tell you how to do things. I will tell you at some point probably that we're going outside the scope of what we're trying for, but that goes to Ken's point about coming up with some tasks.
Right.
So once we've established the scopes, we're going to try to stick to them pretty closely.
I think well.
We can always adjust, but we're not going to just go randomly right and left and backwards and upwards and forwards. So I think, you know, a number of you folks, Tom, Alan, Ken, you've always talked about, you know, let's be specific about what we're looking for.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's we're gonna try to get there, and we'll be looking for you guys to help making sure that, you know, what the ask is understood.
Sure.
And with that, I'm gonna Patty, you had one more. Do you have another quick comment?
Yeah, I think you called Dorothy Patty. Dorothy is on the committee. I'm in the public, so I didn't speak earlier. I'm speaking now. I mean, I spoke way earlier. I have a question for the Planning Commission, and I'm trying to research it, but it's not answering my question. Inclusionary zoning. So I want to know what the hidden taxes that developers don't like when they approach you, so I understand better. What is it about the hidden tax they don't like? Because I read that even with this hidden tax, this zoning ordinance, this inclusionary zoning ordinance has never stifled development, and I don't think it will in Essex.
So Patty, I'm going to actually defer that a little bit, because right now the inclusionary zoning work is being worked on by the Housing Committee, not by the Planning Commission. So I'm not even going to.
Oh, okay. I thought it was a Planning Commission question. Okay, I apologize.
And quite frankly, right now we're still talking about our work group process. So that would be a good question to maybe submit to staff at some point and let them do some research. And we can address that in a public forum at a later date. That work for you, Patty?
Oh yeah, I just thought it was a quick answer, something you just knew. So no biggie.
All right. So with that, anybody who's joined us for talking about work groups and stuff, you're free to go if you'd like, or you're free to stick around. I appreciate it.
Nick, Mark, and Martin.
No, Nick? Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, a quick question or suggestion. I'm happy to reach out to the people in my group if I have their contact information. So if I need to connect with Sharon, Darren, or somebody else, would you reach out to me and provide that information?
Yes, we can do that.
And Josh is a good contact.
Okay, thank you.
Because he's putting a list together.
Right.
Okay. Excellent.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Appreciate your time and your engagement on this.
Okay. Hand is up.
Yep. Okay, so let's move on to the next item on our agenda is minutes from April 28th.
Move we approve the minutes of April 28th.
David or Josh? Not Josh. David or Tom? Can you give me a second?
Second.
Moved by Ned, seconded by Tom.
Um,
Are there any adjustments to the minutes as presented on any of the pages? Hearing none. All those who approve the minutes signify by saying aye.
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 David, you there? Did I hear you?
Yep, I said aye as well.
Okay.
Yep.
Opposed? Minutes passed 4-0. Other business. Darren.
Yes. So as promised or threatened, we are going to try and move ahead with the bylaw modernization grant RFP for a build-out model. So you have the draft RFP in your packet. I've already made some changes to it, just touching up format mostly. But just wanted to give you a preview of what that will look like with the goal. And the goal here is, as I mentioned earlier, we're trying to do these zoning updates that reflect the intent of the grant, which is to do smart growth housing and walkable neighborhoods everywhere in town that we can, not just in the town center. So since we're already doing that, the extra money from this grant can be used hopefully to give us a better sense of what the infrastructure needs might be if we wanted to increase density in the way that is proposed by the state or requested by the state. So that's what this is for. I just wanted to run it by you as a FYI. Let us know if you have comments or questions, but otherwise we'll be putting that out relatively soon.
Okay, great.
Darren, I've got a question. Part of it was to address municipal services. What about other services like power and gas?
It's a good question. Since the town isn't responsible for managing those, we're not necessarily going to look at it in our scope. We can certainly, when we go through the process of looking at those zoning updates, if we do implement them, or really what this will give us is a picture of what's possible. The limiting factors tend to be sewer, frankly, and traffic. So power and gas can usually upscale a lot more easily than we can upscale our sewer. But we will certainly, it's a good suggestion, Tom, to check in with them as well as to what those needs might be.
Yeah, I mention it because I have run into power issues before with.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, no, it's a good point, and it will continue to be an issue, particularly as the grid starts, or as we start going towards electrification and the grid gets more burdened.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks. I will try to add that in there if I can.
All right. Two other business. One other is we received notice today that Catherine Sonic is going to be the new community development director. She begins on June 29th.
What's the name?
Catherine Sonic.
Catherine was our former planner years ago.
Yeah. So we'll be back up to staff, full strength at that point. So that actually might help with, if she's able to engage in the committee process that we're looking at. She's another good resource, I think, to help with it. And I think that was it. Katie, you had a comment. Your hand is raised. To circle back to you real quick.
Thank you. I just wanted to mention that I'm not sure if an email went out in that thread that Josh has been kind of coordinating about the work group discussion tonight, but if so, I didn't see that. Can you just make sure the Housing Commission is still on that? And secondly, I just wanted to mention, I know that some of the groups that are listed in the packet, that you're talking about kind of scheduling and starting those discussions. I know that the Housing Commission hasn't given names or contacts yet. And I'm just wondering, how's the best way for us to, as the Housing Commission, to know when those are scheduled or provide to the group names and contact information so they can get engaged?
Well, I mean, it's the communication from Josh didn't go out across the board. That was just this afternoon. So we'd mentioned that earlier. That was not a forwarded out to anybody yet because he wasn't able to be here tonight. As far as communication on the meetings, as I said earlier, we are looking for the different work groups to set the meetings up. This first round, I was basically volunteering, staff and myself to help set up the first meetings. And then it would be communicated out to those folks who are on. And Katie, if your folks haven't engaged on it yet or write anything to Josh, I think we would probably just work, to you directly and allow you to communicate that down to the rest of your group. And if we don't have other commission that have engaged, we would still be working through the chairs and the vice chairs. So, and expect or allow you to communicate that down as works best for your group. How's that?
That works for me. We have a meeting coming up, and I will make sure that this is on our agenda to kind of try and get you some of the names for that. I just want to make sure that as you're scheduling right now, we don't get kind of lost. So I'm happy to be that contact and help coordinate that for my commission, if that's helpful for right now.
And quite frankly, the contacts may change over time. So, I mean, if you can be the point person to begin with, you can decide who and what needs that, how that needs to change. That would make things probably easier, and we can let Josh know for the time being that Ned needed the housing. All right. Do we have anything else that we need to touch on tonight? And I'll take a motion.
Move we adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned.